Good morning and welcome. I'm Angela Davis and I am the 4 a.m. Quilter. It's Saturday morning and I'm not doing a quilting or sewing video with you right now, but I am having my coffee. I want to talk about a couple different things. One of them is thank you for subscribing. I'm so excited. I'm almost at 100 subscribers and I'm very excited about that. So thank you, thank you. Continue to watch. And so I wanted to, touch base with all of you. The other thing I want to do is apologize because I'm still learning this whole YouTube thing. And my biggest challenge is learning the technology or learning the apps or the skill set to do thumbnails, letters, sound, background music, that sort of thing on my videos. These glasses are a mess. So be patient with me. And, but mostly to say thank you. And it's so exciting that I'm almost at 100. And I'm sort of hoping I might get some return viewers for people who were following me when I was quilting in the basement. And I want to apologize again. When I was transferring footage from that channel to the new channel, I accidentally deleted everything. So again, my apologies. I feel so bad because for people who are new, who want to watch old footage, it's gone. And for people that were following me, they can't go back and rewatch if they want to. So that was very unintentional. And I was very upset when I had done that. I'm just learning all of this. But anyway, enough self-pity. Here we are. It is Saturday morning. It is Memorial Day weekend, and I have a 3-day weekend, and I have much to do. My daughter's graduation party is next weekend. Yay! And so there's going to be a lot of prepping this weekend and a lot of getting things pre-organized in advance. So I'm really excited about that. And I've made a decision in my life to discontinue my antique booth. And not because I don't enjoy it, I still enjoy it. But there's a couple of factors involved about why I made that decision. And the biggest thing is time. And, for those of you who work full-time or even part-time outside the home, you know how valuable it is to have your time at home. And so when I go to my booth, even though I enjoy it, it's a 45-minute drive to my booth. So that's one factor. Driving doesn't bother me. I've always enjoyed being behind the wheel of a car. I don't know why. But it's the time away from my family. And then the time there, a couple times a month, 2-3 times a month on the weekends, reorganizing things, restocking, that sort of thing. So that was the first factor, was the time. The second factor is I'm not making as much money as I would like. Because let's face it, you put time and effort into something, you'd like to get a little bit of return on your investment. I'm not just doing it because I'm enjoying it. I'm also doing it because that little bit of extra money each month helps. Well, that little bit of extra money I'm making, I sat down and I sort of did like an evaluation. I looked at the last 8 months. I looked at my gross income for the booth, and then I looked at my net income from the booth. And it really wasn't as much as I thought it was. And then I factored in my time, my driving, and my time away from my family. And I decided that it wasn't worth losing time away from my family. And it also wasn't worth time away from this because I'm really enjoying this and I don't have to leave my home to do it. I don't have to drive anywhere. I don't have to buy things in advance to do this. Well, I do, but not as much as I was with my booth. Oh, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, my booth, it's an antique booth. I rent space there. I buy things from estate sales and that sort of thing, and I flip them and I make money off of that. Well, how it works is that's your booth, that's your space. You pay rent each month, and then once your rent is met, anything you sell above that is yours to keep. That's what I'm talking about, my antique booth. The other factor was it was taking away time from this. And I'm really enjoying the YouTube channel, and I really want to keep that momentum going. So here I am. And so I gave my 1 month notice. So June is my last month for my booth. So consequently, I have to clean out the basement of things that I've collected over the past year. When you have an antique booth, you have to be out there. You have to be searching. And whether you go out once a month or twice a month to the garage sales, the estate sales during the nice warm weather, during the cold weather, you're hitting all the thrift stores. How it works is, let's say it's June, but I see some really cool stuff for Christmas. I have to snatch it while I see it, because it's not like a regular store where if I don't buy it, well, I'll go back next month, it'll still be there. Not like that in a thrift store. You could go back the next day and what you saw the day before could be gone. So throughout the year as I searched, if I saw something for the holiday or for like a 4th of July weekend, I'd have to buy it. And then I have to store it until that time comes for me to put it in my booth. Well, consequently, I have a lot of stuff in my basement that has been stored up, and it's taking up valuable space. And that's the other thing. Mentally, having all of that extra stuff in my basement was weighing me down. And that was the other reason. You know, mentally and emotionally, it was dragging me every time I went down to do my laundry, because that's the side of my basement that I would store all of my things for my booth. So that was the other reason. Mentally and emotionally, I had all this extra stuff that was starting to become clutter. And even though I had it organized, it was bringing me down mentally and emotionally. So I had to think about that as well. And the nice thing about the YouTube channel, I have the potential to earn a little bit of extra money each month, which would be great. Still doing something that I love to do. And all I need is my phone, a little bit of extra lighting. I'm at home already. I have fabric in my stash already, unless it's for something special, where I have to go out and buy fabric. If it were a wedding or an anniversary, something like that, I can use up what I have already in my stash. I've been doing this for 24 years. I have a stash. A really big one. But I'd rather have that than the other clutter from the booth. I mean, because quilting is just something that feeds my soul. The booth was starting to not feed my soul. So, yeah. So that's what I did. I made a decision. But the one thing that I did want to show you that I brought back from my booth, let me get it. I purchased this, I think, last fall. And I knew when I saw it that it was old. And I found it at the Salvation Army. And I think I paid $50 for it. It was originally $100. It's a log cabin quilt. Here it is. Now I knew when I saw this it was old. And, I've been doing this for a long time. And I love looking at books and reading about vintage quilts. And I had a funny feeling that some of the fabrics in this quilt were old, old, old. And one of them is this one, this one, this one, these two. It's an old one. So what I did was, after I got it home, I took a picture of it and I emailed a quilt appraiser and historian in Columbus, Ohio. When I lived in Columbus, Ohio, I belonged to a quilt guild, and two of the women in the guild were quilt appraisers and historians. So they have a website. So I emailed them and said, hey, this is what I have. Can you give me information? I have an idea. It might be old. And she wrote me back and said, yes, those particular fabrics that I showed you, here's another one. This one. And that one. Are 1850s. And I had a funny feeling. The other fabrics, like the backing, that's 1930s, 1940s. That tells me something. It tells me that this quilt wasn't made over like a 3 or 4 year period. This quilt was made over decades. Now, you have to understand something. Back then, when you bought fabric, you kept every bit of your scraps. And then what mothers would do, or aunts would do, or grandmothers would do, they would pass them down to the next generation. Their daughters, their nieces, their daughter-in-laws, their nieces-in-laws, the neighbors. Because waste not, want not. They couldn't just go on the internet and say, okay, I'm going to order more fabric. They couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to go drive over to the quilt shop or the Joanne Fabrics and buy more fabric. They live 10 miles from the closest general store. Well, 10 miles to you and me is 10 minutes. 10 miles for them could be an entire afternoon of hitching up a buggy and a wagon, going into town, doing all of their shopping, and they may be bulking up, and then visiting while they're there. Because if you live 10 miles out and you're in the country, you may not see people in town for months. So you'd spend a whole day there visiting with people, and then at the end of the day go back, because you might not be back there for months. I think what happened was someone worked on this, didn't finish all the blocks, passed them down to someone else, and then they continued to work on it. And that's the reason why the dating is from 1850s to like the 1930s and 40s. That's my theory. But I have no historical information about this quilt. All I know is that I bought it at the Salvation Army here in Boardman, Ohio. I had someone once tell me, another quilter when I lived in Columbus, who was also part of the Quilt Guild, because I was asking her, how do you put your history on a quilt if you don't know all the history? And she said, you know your history. So if it got handed down from an aunt or a grandmother, and that's all you know, then that's the information that you know that's concrete. So if you want to create a label for it, you put handed down from Aunt Bertha. And if you know Aunt Bertha's date of birth, put it in there. If you know where she was born, put it in there. Then put your name, where you were born, and the town that you live in. That's the history that you know of. So what I want to do is, I want to put a label on this, and I want to include in the label everything that I know about Angela Davis, owner, purchased from a store fall of 2023. And that way there's some type of history here, because my intention was to sell it at the booth. It never sold. That's okay, because now it's mine. I have another one I want to show you. Sunbonnet Sue. This one is definitely the 1930s, 1940s. And the embroidery work and the stitching is beautiful. Can you see her? She has little embroidered, I can't see. See the embroidered flowers? Isn't it gorgeous? Look at this. How the tails come off the stitching. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm gonna have to do a separate video just about these quilts. This one, I think I got this one at the thrift store. And how much was I trying to sell this one for? $75. I never sold. This is all hand stitched, all hand quilted. Right in there, if you can see, that's called an orange peel quilting design. That's in the border. In the squares, she did straight line quilting. And again, in the border, she did that orange peel. I call it an orange peel. Some people call it a tea leaf. The stitching is very consistent. I'd have to get out my measuring tool to see how many stitches per inch. But the stitching is pretty consistent. Pretty consistent. Very nice. Let me show you another one. Oh, she's pretty. Do this one. There's one in that blue aqua. So pretty. This one, of course, is going to be hand stitched, the log cabin. The quilting is, they just went across diagonally in each log cabin. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure if you can see that. You can see it a little bit there. And the stitching on this one is really, really tiny. Oh boy. Yeah, stitching on the hand stitching on this one's very tiny. Since I believe it was made by multiple people, maybe 2 people or 3 people, it could be that whoever finished it did all the quilting, but the piecing might have been done by the earlier generation. And the binding, they just pulled the back to the front. That's all. That's my theory. Or it could be that whoever inherited the fabric bag found blocks already pre-made, and then they just put them together and made the quilt. I mean, there's a lot of theories you could tell yourself, you know. This one, they took the front and the back and they folded both and matched up the folds and then hand stitched it right there next to the fold to keep it together. Yep, that's what they did. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And I'm kind of glad they didn't sell, because now they're going to stay with me. The biggest thing I need to remember about having antique quilts in the house is to display them where there's not a lot of direct light, because direct sunlight will fade the fabric even more and damage it even more. And the other thing is temperature control. Fluctuations in temperature can damage the fibers as well. So I have a couple of quilt racks that I can use. Hanging an old quilt can cause stress on it. You'd have to switch it out often. I think I might just use one of my smaller quilt racks so that I can fold and refold them every week to keep them from getting permanent creases. But I wanted to share that with you too. They are beautiful, aren't they? Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for subscribing. Give me those thumbs up. They help with the algorithm. I'm Angela Davis, and I'm the 4am Quilter, where I share, care, and create with you. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.